Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're rediving deep into one of the most crucial pieces of technology in the Warhammer 40k universe, the Gellar Field. We all know it's what keeps Imperial ships safe while they travel through the chaotic nightmare dimension known as the warp. But have you ever stopped to wonder just how effective it really is? Is it a perfect shield, or more like a leaky old umbrella in a hurricane of horrors? Let's get into it. First off, what even is a Gellar Field? In simple terms, it's a bubble of real space that a starship projects around itself. This bubble essentially shields the vessel from the raw, unfiltered madness of the immaterium. Inside this bubble, the laws of physics still apply. And more importantly, demons and other warp entities unjust phase through the hull and turn the crew into a buffet. The device that generates this field is called a Gellar Field generator, and it's powered by a psycho whose mind is constantly focused on maintaining this projection of reality. Think of it as a lighthouse keeper, but instead of guiding ships away from rocks, they're holding back an endless ocean of pure insanity. So, on paper it sounds pretty solid, right? A bubble of safety in an ocean of chaos. But here's the catch. Gellar Fields are far from perfect. They have weaknesses, and when they fail, the consequences are beyond catastrophic. The biggest weakness is that they can flicker, fluctuate, or even fail completely. Why? Well, a number of reasons. Mechanical failure is a big one. These are ancient, often poorly understood pieces of technology. A simple power surge, a lack of maintenance, or just plain old bad luck can cause the generator to stutter. Even a momentary flicker, a split-second drop in the field's integrity, is like opening a window in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean. In that instant, warp entities can slip through. They might be small, mischievous creatures that just cause a bit of poltergeist-style trouble, or they could be full-blown demons that manifest on the ship and begin a rampage. The crew's own thoughts and emotions can also weaken the field from the inside. Intense fear, hatred, or despair can create psychic weak points in the bubble, attracting the attention of things that lurk outside. It's a vicious cycle. The terror of warp travel makes the crew anxious, and that anxiety can make the Gellar Field weaker, which in turn makes the journey even more terrifying. Another major vulnerability is sabotage. A traitor on board, a cultist of chaos, could intentionally damage the Gellar Field generator. This is a common plot in many 40k stories, and it almost always ends in a bloodbath. And let's not forget the psycho powering the device. These individuals are under immense, constant mental strain. If their concentration wavers, if they fall asleep, or if their mind is simply overwhelmed by the psychic pressure of the warp, the field can collapse. This is why these psychers are often kept in a state of suspended animation or are heavily sedated, but even that isn't a foolproof solution. When a Gellar Field fails completely, it's game over. The ship is instantly flooded with the raw energy of the immaterium. The laws of physics cease to apply. Corridors can twist into impossible shapes. Gravity can reverse, and time itself can become meaningless. The crew members suffer fates far worse than death. Their bodies might be grotesquely mutated, their souls devoured by demons, or they could be trapped in an eternal loop of their worst nightmares. The ship itself becomes a ghost ship, a demon-infested hulk that drifts through the warp for eternity, a permanent monument to a failed journey. So, given these terrifying weaknesses, you might be wondering, is there a better long-term alternative? This is a question the brightest minds in the Imperium have been grappling with for millennia. The most obvious, and perhaps the most ambitious, alternative is the webway. The webway is a network of extra-dimensional tunnels created by the ancient Eldar civilization. It's a stable, controlled environment, completely separate from the chaos of the warp. Traveling through the webway is infinitely safer and faster than braving the immaterium. There's no need for Gellar Fields, no risk of demonic incursion, and no time dilation. It's the ultimate interstellar highway. The problem, the webway is mostly broken. During the fall of the Eldar, vast sections of it were destroyed or became infested with all sorts of unpleasant things. What remains is jealously guarded by the various Eldar factions. For humanity, accessing the webway is almost impossible. The Emperor himself had a grand plan to create a human-accessible extension of the webway, a project that would have freed humanity from its reliance on the warp forever. But this project was shattered during the Horus Heresy, and the knowledge of how to achieve it was lost. Rebuilding it would be a monumental task, requiring a level of technological and psychic understanding that the current Imperium simply doesn't possess. So if the webway is off the table for now, what else is there? Another theoretical alternative is the development of stable warp routes. The idea is that certain pathways through the warp are naturally less turbulent and less infested with demons than others. The Navigators, the mutant guild, responsible for steering ships through the warp, have some knowledge of these safer currents. If the Imperium could somehow map and secure these routes, perhaps by creating permanent psychic beacons along the way, they could make warp travel significantly less perilous. This would be like building lighthouses and dredging channels in a chaotic sea. It wouldn't eliminate the danger entirely, but it would manage it, making travel more predictable and reliable. However, the warp is constantly shifting and changing. A route that is safe one day could be a death trap the next. Mapping the warp is like trying to map the surface of a boiling pot of water. It's an almost impossible task. A third, more radical idea would be to abandon warp travel altogether and develop alternative forms of faster-than-light travel. This is where things get really speculative. Perhaps some form of fold space drive or a hyperspace engine could be invented, something that bypasses the warp entirely. The Necrons have technology that allows for near-instantaneous travel without entering the immaterium at all. The tau have a form of FTL that involves skimming the surface of the warp, taking shorter, controlled jumps that minimize exposure. While their method is much slower than Imperial warp travel, it's also vastly safer. If the Adeptus Mechanicus could somehow reverse engineer this kind of technology, it could revolutionize travel for the Imperium. But the Mechanicus is notoriously dogmatic and resistant to innovation, especially when it comes to alien technology, which they view as heretical. So, let's assume we have a better solution, whether it's a repaired webway, stable warp routes, or a new FTL drive. How would you even begin to apply it across the entire Imperium? This is where the sheer scale of the 40K universe becomes a huge problem. The Imperium spans the entire galaxy and consists of over 1 million worlds. Implementing any system-wide change is a logistical nightmare of epic proportions. Let's take the webway for example. Even if the Emperor's dream could be resurrected and a human-controlled webway gate was built on Terra, how would you connect it to the rest of the galaxy? You would need to build new gates on every single important planet, from fortress worlds like Cadia to hive worlds like Necromunda. Each of these gates would be a mega-project on a scale that makes building a cathedral look like a weekend DIY job. It would require immense resources, specialized labor, and, most importantly, security. A webway gate is a potential backdoor into a planet, and it would need to be defended with the same fervor as a palace. This rollout would take centuries, if not millennia, and during that time, the vast majority of the Imperium would still be reliant on the good old, terrifying Gellar Field. What about applying the tau's skimming technology? First, you'd have to convince the Adeptus Mechanicus to even study it, which is a huge hurdle. Then, you'd have to figure out how to mass-produce it and retrofit it onto the entire Imperial Navy. We're talking about millions of ships. From tiny scout vessels to colossal battleships, the Imperial fleet is a hodgepodge of different designs and classes, many of them thousands of years old. Creating a standardized new drive system that could be installed on all of them would be a gargantuan undertaking. Forge worlds would have to be completely retooled. Entire generations of tech priests would need to be retrained. It's a project that would make the Industrial Revolution on ancient Earth look like child's play. The challenge isn't just technological or logistical, it's also political and cultural. The Navigator houses hold a monopoly on warp travel. Their power and wealth are entirely dependent on the Imperium's need for their unique abilities. A new form of FTL that doesn't require navigators would effectively make them obsolete. They would fight such a change with every political and economic weapon at their disposal. The same goes for the Adeptus Mechanicus, who benefit from the mystique and dependence on their ancient technology. A simpler, safer technology could threaten their power base. In the end, the Gellar Field, for all its flaws, remains the backbone of the Imperium because it's what they have. It's a flawed, terrifying, and often unreliable solution, but it's a solution that works just well enough to keep the galaxy-spanning empire from collapsing. It perfectly embodies the grimdark nature of the 40K universe, a desperate, jury-rigged measure holding back a tide of utter annihilation, with failure always just a heartbeat away. It's not efficient, it's not safe, but it's the only thing standing between humanity and a fate worse than extinction. So what do you guys think? Is there a viable alternative I missed? Could the Imperium ever truly escape its reliance on the warp? Let me know your theories down in the comments. It's always fascinating to hear what you all come up with. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Warhammer lore. I'll see you in the next one.